Hello, my name's Sean Hewitt, and this is my friend Sid Smith. And we're going through a regular ramble, starting now, through the new regular part work of the definitive Bob Dylan on vinyl, starting with issue 1, The Times They Are A-Changin. We've both got this in our local W.H. Smith's, or in Sid's case, some secret source. And basically, there's 41 editions of this. So that's nearly all of Bob Dylan's albums, nearly in chronological order. We're starting with album 3, and we're not going to be digging deep into scholarship, or we're not going to be gratuitously criticizing. I'm just a big fan of Bob Dylan, and my friend Sid Smith is not a fan of Bob Dylan. He is a skeptic, and basically I'm going to be trying to convince him, and he's going to be trying to convince me these albums really are a waste of time. And we're going to do that by buying every edition of 41 of these quite expensive 180-gram vinyl records to persuade ourselves that we're right and hopefully entertain you in the process.
Well, I have to take issue straight off the bat. It's not that I don't like Bob Dylan, and I wouldn't presume to try and persuade you to start disliking Bob Dylan. It's not that I don't like Bob Dylan, but it's just that Bob Dylan goes on too long. Every song, it just like years go by, empires rise and fall, and you kind of want to say, Bob, the first 3 minutes, they're great, but just drop the rest, you know. So and of course, you know, Bob Dylan's been around forever. He's been part of my musical upbringing just as much as some other things have, although I've never really bought much Bob Dylan before. And I can't quite believe that I've agreed to start buying fucking Bob Dylan vinyl, LPs. So it's going to be a bit of an odd one. And the other thing to say is, although I'm familiar with some of the songs, obviously from this, I've never heard this album from start to finish until like the day before.
How many of these albums do you think you'll have heard when we go through them?
I think I've heard about. Well, I kind of know Blonde on Blonde very well. I've got a CD of Blonde on Blonde, and I've got a couple of others, but to be honest, I can't remember which ones. Sometime back in the 70s, I lived in a shared house, and Bob Dylan was a big kind of feature in that house. There was a couple of Bob Dylan fans lived in it. So I got to hear albums when they were coming out, like Street Legal and Desire. So so those albums I've got pretty much a handle on. But most of these albums in the series, they're new to me. They're brand new. So it's kind of interesting from that point of view for me. The other thing that's interesting from all sorts of points of view is that you're a fan of Bob Dylan, and I've been characterized as not being a fan of Bob Dylan, which I suppose is fair enough. But I'm buying this because, you know, I play a lot of vinyl. But you're buying these, and you don't have a turntable.
That's correct. I'm buying this. This was only $7.99. Don't try and make out I'm stupid. But I've not been able to play this week. I am hoping to get a turntable. You've got 4 though.
Yes.
Yeah. Well. So you're the one who doesn't like him, and you've got 4 turntables and can play this 4 different times, sounding differently each time. And I'm the big fan, and I can't play this. However, I have got the album on CD. Like, I must point out, I've got all his albums on CD. So this is the standard stereo issue, and this is from, I've got another CD, which is from the Mono collection. And this is a beautiful reproduction of the album, including the legendary insert, which indeed is included in this vinyl one, which is a lovely little touch. I don't think that was even in the original British pressing of this album. So you did that. First of all, though, this is being sold as a magazine, a fortnightly magazine. What do we think of the magazine? And do bear in mind that you're a man who's just said Bob Dylan goes on too long, and he's wearing a Magma T-shirt when you answer this question, because I was a bit offended by that. Yes.
Well, I have to say, Sean, the magazine that comes with this, well, I think the right word for it is it's shit. And I say it's shit because basically, yeah, there you go. Yeah.
It's a poster, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not a magazine.
Well, the thing is, what would be great is if they did it, like, for example, on this side, there's a really nice portrait of Dylan there.
Totally unframeable.
Unfortunately, it's got this big red box in the bottom, so you can't really put it up on the wall. I compare this to the other part works which I've invested in the past.
I wish I got that one.
So
that looks really good.
So this is by a group called the Beatles, Sean.
I was going to ask you who they were. It doesn't say on the front cover. Oh, it's on the back.
No,
it says who they are.
Yeah, it is who they are.
So yeah, it's kind of subtly mentioned on the back there.
So the magazine that came with the Beatles, Abbey Road, it's light. It doesn't really tell you anything a hardcore fan doesn't know, but it's got a bit of text. It's got some nice photographs. If you were that way inclined, there's one that's suitable for framing. The other version, the other part work thing that I bought years ago was a copy of Miles Davis' Kind of Blue, which I already had on vinyl anyway. And
was that an LP you'd heard before?
It was, yes. I have heard of Miles Davis before, but this came with a magazine, which was all right, not great, but look at this.
That is magnificent, isn't it? That's a magnificent.
It's mad.
It is, isn't it?
Well, it doesn't necessarily help with the music, but it just sort of feels like there's a bit of packaging. With the Bob Dylan series, my guess is the makers of it probably don't really need to bother too much about Bob Dylan magazine side, and I'm assuming they're putting whatever money they've invested in the series into reproducing the vinyl, which I have to say, bearing in mind I've not heard the album before, when I put it on and I did listen to both sides, I actually really thought it sounded great. Just the quality of the pressing I thought was great.
That's good.
I also, I have to say, I've seen this image before, obviously, but I really love it. I think it's a great photograph, superb photograph. Lots going on there. And I actually like the way the typeface works and all the rest of it. It's got a good vibe to it. And as you said earlier, the insert, which I didn't know didn't come on the original UK pressings, but one of the things I really enjoyed about this pressing, I didn't know anything about the insert, and I think I discovered it after I'd finished playing it. So I sat down and I read this insert. And you know what? I really enjoyed the insert. I thought it was fascinating, and it reminded me of being a teenager and reading Jack Kerouac stuff. And I like the kind of colloquialisms on the thing, on the typing. It's very much a piece of typing rather than a piece of writing, but it's really engaging, and it does that thing of it mentions all sorts of names and which I think when you're younger and you come across things which reference names you've never heard of, particularly in a pre-internet age, these are signposts and pointers. And it's kind of how you educate yourself in a pre-internet age. I mean, these days you just press the button and find out who, for example, Allen Ginsberg is. But in 1960, whenever this came out, what year did this come out? This album?
This is 1963, I think.
So
it's 1964. Sorry, this is his third album. I'm getting it mixed up with the second. This is 1964.
So it's possible. It's possible that you'd be somebody reading it, and you might not know who these people are, but then you'll start searching those names out simply because Bob's mentioned it. I also notice, he mentions Miles Davis, for example. I don't know if he mentions any other part work stars, but but there we are. And the thing I loved about it the most, and I'll shut up in a second, is. Reading through it, I read it all the way through, and I found it absolutely riveting. I really felt like I was on a journey with him. I could sort of sense the kind of velocity at which he's writing all this down or typing it down, however he did it. But there's a great quote here, which he uses from Francois Truffaut's Shoot the Piano Player. And he says, there's a movie called Shoot the Piano Player, the last line proclaiming, "Music, man, that's where it's at. It is a religious line outside, the chimes rung, and they are still ringing." I thought, wow, that's really...
Yeah, he's got away with words. And you mentioned your young years when you're in front, these big names appear to you for the first time, and they open doors. He isn't that old.
No.
He isn't that old when he's writing this stuff. I mean, he's in his very early 20s at this point. So he's been writing for some time, and he's been writing since his late teens, really. And I think the names he mentioned in this are the kind of names that open doors for him, when he was in his youth.
Yeah.
And it's quite interesting. He often sounds like a man with an old head on his shoulders, even at this age, when he's 21, 22. Anyway, I think we better move on then with the record itself. This is a new experience for you, listening to The Times They Are Changing. What did you think of it?
I loved the intimacy of the record. I thought the recording of the record, I know this will be grossly offending Bob Dylan fans with the obviousness of it all, but I can only just tell you how it occurred to me as I was listening to. Obviously, some songs I know, because Dylan is such a major part of popular culture, so he's right in there. So but listening to these songs, it was the one-to-oneness of the songs that I really liked. So there's an element of performance and that intimacy. It's kind of like he's in the room and he's just, and you can just see how appealing that would be. And arguably still is appealing, but you can definitely see how Bob was taken to the bosom of a nation, like kind of putting these records on and kind of losing themselves, people losing themselves in it. There's some of it which it makes you. These days we take everything for granted. Nothing is shocking. Nothing bothers anybody anymore. But I was slightly taken aback when I listened to God on Your Side, which I sort of knew in outline. And there's a line there about the Auschwitz and what have you. And of course, when he recorded this, you mentioned he was like just over 20 years old or something. But,
in his early 20s, yeah.
Yeah, in his early 20s. But of course, World War II and the horrors of World War II were less than 20 years old when this was recorded.
If it was us, it would be it would have ended, in 2002. That's how close it is.
Yeah.
To this age. It's astonishing, really, how recent it was.
So I really got a sense that this was dispatches from the front line. And the title track, Times They Are Changing, is yes, it goes on a bit, but I am prepared to admit it is a great song. It just is. And you can have all sorts of issues with Bob Dylan's voice. You can have also all sorts of issues with his verbosity, and even his lyrical flights of fancy. But the bottom line is, times are changing.
I don't think you can have issues with that.
Well, apparently not. But
you can.
But I'm saying
I don't think a normal person can have.
Somewhere in the multiverse of Earths, there will be an Earth where people are having issues with Bob Dylan's verbosity. I think we have to accept that.
but not this one.
Right. So that's me done for the overall album. I mean, there are other songs which I like, but that's the one that kind of really hit me between the eyes. And the times they are changing. Those were the ones.
Yeah, this is a record that's been called the greatest protest album ever, and it is kind of the height. It's album 3, but it's already the height of one thing people still call him, a protest singer. But that's quite a small part of his career, and it reaches its absolute height in terms of the political songs on this album. So there are the title track is a kind of general call to arms, a generational call of arms, and you get Hollis Brown, Ballad of Hollis Brown, which is a relentless picture of poverty and oppression of the poor, and you get With God on Our Side, which is it's taken on nationalism and blind patriotism and the use of religion to bolster that in a quite direct way, and Only a Pawn in Their Game, which is again for a man his age, a kid, is saying that even the right-wing politicians that are saying this, we're all pawns in the game, but so are they. Which is quite a, it's quite a thing to put in a pop song in 1964. And then there's of course one of the most famous songs he ever wrote, "The Lonesome Death of Hattie, Carroll," which is in many ways the most brilliant of his songs. Constantly telling us, when he tells us some new outrage about this rich white man against this poor black woman based on a real story, that now is not the time for your tears until the end of the song, and the wonderful polemic of the song. And that's one of my problems with this kind of writing on him. I find him a far more interesting artist when he's not writing protest songs, and particularly with that protest song, which reveals for the first time, I think, in a serious way, his problem with facts. There is a real Hattie. There was a real Hattie Carroll. There was a real William Zanzinger, and William Zanzinger was taken to court. That's about all you can say that is true in that song. I think she did die, but did he kill her? Clinton Halin, one of the most controversial Dylan writers, says that Bob's taken all of his information for that song from a newspaper article he read, which was very sensationalist and very inaccurate, and he's not read any subsequent journalism on it because everything is in that article. And if you want a song about racial prejudice and injustice, it's an amazing song. It's just a pity, I think, he gets the facts wrong, and I think he was lucky not to be sued for libel for that song. So,
is that not a bit unfair on Dylan? Because at the time he's responding, presumably
he's responding in two ways. He's responding with anger to the story he's read in the paper.
Yeah,
and he's also, because this is an ambitious person, he's thinking that'll be a song. And he's writing this, and he does a brilliant job, and people still talk about that song.
Yeah.
But I think this is a problem with him though, because when you get to songs like Hurricane, and which is you can believe what you like about Hurricane, but I think Joni Mitchell was more right about Hurricane than Bob Dylan was. She had very great doubts about him when she met him. And Joey, from the same album, Desire, years after this. But that's an attempt to make a saint out of someone who really was a complete bastard. Or because he allegedly tried to stop his wife and kid being shot, which seems to have been the only act of anything approaching altruism in his entire life. And it becomes this terrible dirge that ignores the facts about somebody in order to create a myth.
Hang on, did you just call a Bob Dylan song a terrible dirge?
Yeah.
Well, the tables are surely turning here.
That's one song. This is not on this record.
Right.
We'll get to that record in about 2 years' time.
All right.
But
so that all of you and your facts aside, what's the one track on this album that you would pick as being the one that works for you the most? And
well, as I said, sorry, I have a bit of a problem with the. I admire his protest songs more than love them. When I love him, he's being a bit more poetic, a bit more ambiguous, a bit more emotional. And for me, on this album, that's the song "Boots of Spanish Leather," which is a song to his girlfriend, Suze Rotolo. She's decided she's going to Italy, and he's written that song to her, basically. And it's based on an old folk standard where the person who's going away asks the lover they're leaving behind, "What do you want me to bring as a token of my love when I return?" And he continually repeats, "No, I don't want anything. Nothing can compare to you." And then at the end of it, he realizes she's not going to come back and says, "I'll have some boots of Spanish leather then, please." And there's something about that song. It's so tender and it's so genuine. And I find that song touches me after all these years more than anything else on this record. Brilliant, although most of it is.
Well, this is a bit awkward because, as I said earlier,
well, you picked the Lonesome Death of Hattie Carroll, have you?
I like the times are changing, and God on Your Side. Yeah, like elements of that. But the one song that really hit me between the eyes, which I don't think I'd heard before,
really,
was Boots of Spanish Leather.
Oh. Well, there you go.
I'm not making this up. This is absolutely true. There was something about it. Just there was two things about it. One was the melody was taken from a traditional song called North Country, or which I knew through Roy Harper singing North Country. I know this isn't the song, the North Country, but the melody is. I've kind of A-B'd them, as it were, and or it is mostly that melody. So
he does take a lot of melodies.
So I have a, and there's nothing wrong with that because folk singers do that all the time,
Yeah.
So I don't have any issues with that. But there was something about, there was just a different tone in the voice, and it felt deep. It felt sincere. It felt heartfelt. Would be probably not very good way of describing it, but that's the word I'm going to reach for. And I played it a couple of times, and I was still kind of quite. There's a certain reverie to it, And I suppose, in a romantic sense, we probably relate to it on all sorts of reasons. I remember just the other day, my partner, my wife Deborah, going out and asking me if there was anything I wanted from the shops, and I did say the Beatles Get Back album, or Let It Be rather, but. So who knows? But she might. She hasn't come back yet with it, but who knows? We live in hope.
She'll come back with a pair of boots of Spanish leather. That's what she'll come back with.
But overall, do you know what? Not a big Bob Dylan fan, but I quite enjoyed the experience. It was mostly all new music to me, and it kind of worked for me. I have to say.
Well, that's very heartening.
It's very worrying. Right.
Only 40 more to go.
Yeah, I can't believe I'm doing this. So what's next in this series?
Well, the next in the series is the album before. As I said, it's mostly in the right order, but the first 3 editions of this magazine are the first 3 albums in what seems to be reverse order.
Right.
And I don't know why they've done that. I suppose this is a famous album, and they want to start off with a big come and see our magazine, whereas the first Bob Dylan album, which only contains 2 original songs, isn't a big seller from that point of view, is it? It's not a great kick-off point, but I'm still a bit baffled as to why they haven't just gone back to 1.
Yeah, it seems mad.
Although the next one, the freewheeling Bob Dylan, has got another very famous, nay iconic album cover.
Yeah, well, we'll come to that in a fortnight's time. I do remember, just chiming in very quickly, I do remember with the Beatles part work, it started with Abbey Road and then it went all over the place, so.
Oh, did it?
I guess they're doing the same for Bob Dylan. Right. I think that's it. That's all I want to say about Bob Dylan.
It's been very nice talking to you.
I have a sense that I'm gonna have to start listening to more Bob Dylan than I've ever listened to in my life. This is a bit worrying. This is what happens when you get old. I think